We are animals, and therefore what we do to other animals affects us. We see this in the form of climate change, meat industries linked to climate change, or the fact that leather is the most polluting fashion material. Just essentially everything we do to animals has an effect on us, whether it's animals used for food, animals used for fashion, animal experimentation, even animals used for entertainment, even individual cases of cruelty to animals, where people who are cruel to animals are 3 times more likely to commit crimes against human beings. It's not just nice to be nice to animals. It's a necessity.
What the hell is up, everyone? My name is Jamie Logan, and today I am here with a very special guest in India because I've been here for a few months, and what better person to interview than Poorva Joshipura, the Director of PETA India. She is also the Senior Vice President of International Affairs, and I am so honored to sit down with you because you are the one of the OG PETA ladies.
I've been around for a long time. There's actually a lot of people at PETA who are way more OG than I am, and I've been there for 25 years.
25 years fighting for the animals.
Yeah.
Take me back to how you got into animal rights.
I always loved animals when I was a kid, but I ate animals, I wore animals, I bought any kind of products without thinking about whether they're tested on animals. I went to the zoo, I went to the circus, but I loved animals, or at least that's what I thought. And it really wasn't until I was 16 years old, and I went on a school field trip, and a friend of mine, we ended up in a mall food court, and we were deciding where to get something to eat, and a friend of mine went and got something vegetarian, and I went to go get a McDonald's chicken burger. And we met back at the table, and she said, "Are you really going to eat that?" And I thought, "Yes, why?" And she said, "Well, it's an animal." And that was despite having thought of myself as somebody who loved animals my entire life. That was the first time I thought about the food on my plate, which is strange because my mother's vegetarian, but she was coming at it from a religious point of view, and I didn't really quite get that. But here the argument was brought to me from an ethical perspective. I ate the chicken burger that day, but I thought about it, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. So that was the first moment that a seed was planted in my mind. I went on this journey with the same friend. Funnily enough, she also works at PETA now, so we both joined PETA at the same time 25 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. She's the head of HR at PETA US.
She created a monster.
She did. And the funny thing is, the way that she went a vegetarian and then ultimately vegan and became an activist is her father lived in London. We both grew up in the States. Her father lived in London. She went to London to visit her dad. They were walking down Oxford Street, the shopping street, and somebody handed her a leaflet. So that's how she became vegetarian. And then she loved the Smiths, and they had that song, "Meat is Murder." So all these things, people think, oh, does it really matter if I, hand somebody a leaflet? Is it going to change anybody? I wish I could find that person, because that person made her vegetarian, ultimately vegan. She spoke to me. Now, the both of us have been at PETA for the last 25 years helping animals because somebody handed her a leaflet.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. That is such an amazing story, and it does go to show the impact that one person can have. And so when it comes to activism, talk to me about how you maybe overcame any discomfort or fears. Can you recall one of your first actions, arrests? I mean, you've done so much.
I have, but I am... If you saw me as a kid, I was introverted. I was a shy person. I didn't want to kind of, speak up, or that was very uncomfortable to me. But through PETA and through reading about animal rights and watching the videos and learning about it, you realize that that discomfort that you might be feeling is no comparison whatsoever to what the animals are suffering. And that if you don't speak up, who will? So I had to overcome all of that kind of not wanting to speak up and, being shy. And now I'm completely the opposite person. I've somehow trained myself to be, because I just, after you watch the videos, after you see how chickens are sitting in cages their entire lives where they can't even move a wing, or how a cow's throat is slit for something as frivolous as a belt or a pair of shoes. And most people don't know that, because this is all happening behind closed doors. Somebody has to say something, somebody has to tell them, and somebody has to speak out against it. So it's those types of things that I initially had to overcome. And then, yes, somebody also has to go and expose what's going on. And so I started getting involved with investigations for PETA. So I've done investigations at slaughterhouses, at some laboratories, other places where animals are used and abused, and overseen investigations. And it's all, I think, comes out of none of it is comfortable, but it's far more uncomfortable to not do something about it.
Right. In your book, For a Moment of Taste, you actually describe what is going on inside these places, and being somebody that has seen it firsthand, what do you want people to know about these industries? And can you talk a little bit about how you break this down in your book, For a Moment of Taste?
Yeah, I want people to know that they should really think about where they're getting the information that's told to them. You hear oftentimes people say, oh, vegans, they're always trying to tell us what to do and things like that. Well, have they noticed that all of the advertising down the street is from McDonald's or Burger King or KFC? Or, those are the people who are really trying to tell you what to do. So, we have no vested interest. There's no vested monetary interest in getting this information out. So it's very important, I thought, to help to get to the truth of the matter, especially in India at the time that I was doing these investigations. Nobody else really was. So I thought it particularly important to get behind the walls of Indian slaughterhouses, to follow Indian trucks, to go onto Indian factory farms, and to help people see what's happening to animals here. Because there was a lot of misconceptions that, oh, that doesn't happen in India, and so on and so forth. So to get those photos, that video footage out that you can see on PETA India's website, PETA India's social media. But those were, the videos, they're very hard-hitting. They're extremely difficult to watch. They're usually only about a minute long, or that sort of thing. And I thought, yes, people are understanding that there's a lot of cruelty involved, but there's so much more cruelty involved in meat, egg, and dairy production, especially with the rise of factory farming in India. With just like everywhere around the world, most animals in India are now increasingly factory farmed. And I wanted people to understand what happens to these animals in detail, because they deserve for their stories to be told at that level. So that's what For a Moment of Taste, my first book, is about. It's about what happens to animals specifically in India for meat, eggs, and dairy. And so each chapter of the book talks about different aspects of meat, egg, and dairy production. And then I also have a chapter on the impact of all of this production of these foods that we don't need on the environment, and then on our own health.
And as an activist, I mean, those of you guys that might be listening as well, I really recommend continuously researching, continuously reading books like this, because it helps us to be that much more eloquent when speaking about these issues. And I'm still shocked by some of these industry standard practices. I was at a dairy farm earlier today here in India, and you hear, oh, this doesn't happen in India. We don't slaughter cows, and they're holy and sacred here. And I'm looking at this dead baby cow's head hanging from the ceiling in this place where dairy farmers do this, where they hang the calf's head to help the mothers lactate more. And this is, I mean, shocking to me.
Yeah, there's a name for it. It's called a Khaal Bachha. That it translates essentially into empty baby. And these myths that people have, that cows are treated well here, or this doesn't happen to animals in India. The dairy industry especially hides behind those myths. But the reality is, and more people in India are waking up to this fact, is that cows and buffaloes are killed for milk. The male calves, they're considered to be of no use to the dairy industry. They are either left to starve in a corner. We've seen that on dairy farms in India. Or they're thrown out onto the street. So all those cows that end up getting hit by cars and so on, they're either discarded female cows after their milk production has waned, or they're male calves because they cannot produce milk, or they're sent to slaughter. And there's plenty of illegal slaughterhouses in India. So even in places where cow slaughter is illegal, it doesn't necessarily stop these animals from being killed. Or they're sent to overcrowded gaushalas, which are often sort of like dairy farms and so on in and of themselves, contributing to some of these same sorts of problems. Male calves especially are very much killed for dairy, but so are the females. You know, ultimately, when their milk production wanes, most of them end up at the slaughterhouse. And so it is no coincidence that India is the world leader in dairy production, as well as a major beef exporter and leather producer.
And that explains it. It shows the relationship of how they are all intertwined. And I was just watching these mothers, looking at them in the eyes and seeing them get hit and beaten. And it's this idea that we have to move away from, that these animals are here for us and that they have a purpose to serve us. It's this awakening that we need to have as a society. And so we're working on it, right?
Yeah, and I this, if we just even think about what you saw, the Khaal Bachha, the very point of it is they don't need the male calf because the male calf doesn't produce milk. But there's a belief that seeing a calf may encourage the mother's body to lactate more. Or the mother is fooled into lactating more for this baby. Now, it is undoubtedly so that the mother cow or buffalo recognizes that this baby is dead. Mm-hmm. So can you imagine someone having taken your baby, killed your baby, then propping up your baby on a stick and putting this baby in front of you? Just that alone.
So sick.
It's so sick because these mother cows and buffaloes are such seriously protective mothers. I mean, they will fight a tiger to protect their baby. We see that with buffaloes all the time in India. And yet, this is what we do, and we do this. We take milk away from their baby to feed our baby ice cream.
Right.
It's
Make it make sense.
It's sick.
It is
It is
beyond
sick.
evil. And people will try to find all different loopholes and ways of justifying it by saying, oh, well, the moms produce excess milk. And I'm like, do you have any idea how many hormones they're given and injected with?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, or they'll say, well, they would have been slaughtered otherwise. And I'm like, well, you could say that slave owners said the same thing about slaves, that, well,
Yeah.
they were only there because they had a purpose. It's like,
Yeah.
we need to move away, obviously, from this idea. As an activist, and you being in this for so long, being at PETA for 25 years, we find ourselves having to repeat the same information, the same things over and over again. And sometimes there's stories or things that we come across where it's so utterly horrific that it affects us. But a lot of the time, we have to protect ourselves from the suffering and from the videos that we see on a daily basis. Do you ever find that you are desensitized and sometimes, like, it's a protection mechanism in your brain, but how do you deal with that, and how do you stay so motivated?
I'm motivated because there's work to do, and I would feel so much worse if I knew that this was going on and wasn't taking any action. And there's so many easy actions, you know. You don't have to be a full-time animal rights activist to take action for animals. We all can, whether it's not eating animals, not wearing animals, you know, volunteering at your local animal shelter, or logging onto a website like PETA's, where there's lots of ideas on easy ways that you can help animals and so on. I think that it is that action that makes me feel better, because it's, you know, I could put, you know, my hands above my eyes and, you know, pretend it's not all going on, but it is. It is. And it's hard for us to see. Imagine how difficult it is for the animals to endure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. When you are talking with friends and family, how do you sometimes handle those situations? I find that the hardest part about me being vegan is just dealing with other people. What's your advice on that?
It's true. And I think, you know, we have to probably be reasonable in our expectations. I don't think, you know, some people, some of our friends and family might hear it once and decide to change overnight. But sometimes it does take a few tries. What I've found is that a lot of times the same people who were the most, I suppose, vicious in their response, or kind of the most challenging, or the most, you know, down the line, maybe some months later, a year later or two, there have been numerous times where I've heard them tell me, actually, you know what, I'm trying to go vegan now. And it's because you made them think. They felt guilty about their own actions, and they needed some time to think about it and to come around to the idea. So I think we have to recognize that people might be at different places on their journey and on their understanding. And sometimes the people who come at us the hardest, they're the ones we've made think about these issues the most.
Yeah.
Also, I think just leading by example, sharing delicious vegan food, inviting people to vegan restaurants, having your own support network, you know, getting together with other people who are vegan. I mean, nowadays with social media, it's so easy to find other like-minded people. I think these are some of the ways that we can help ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then also just having that, it's hard to have patience when you know that there's so much suffering going on, but gently, and I think, you know, making living vegan fun and accessible and as easy as possible, and showing people it's not this huge mountain to climb. You know, it's the difference between putting this kind of milk or that kind of milk in your coffee.
Absolutely. It's only gotten easier over time. So these are kind of the same people, though, that will look at you and say, well, there's so many humans that are suffering and dying. And even here in India, I've had people say to me, there's people that are living on the side of the street out of tents. How are you so focused on animals? So in your book, Survival at Stake, you draw these parallels between how animal agriculture, and human animals are related. So, how would you respond to somebody that says, why don't you care about humans? Why do you focus so much on animals? And maybe draw a few examples from your book.
Well, I wrote the book because of that question. Because of how common that question is, people expect that all human problems are addressed, or all human problems are solved first before we get to the animals. But we are animals, and therefore what we do to other animals affects us. And I already knew that, you already know that, we see this in the form of climate change, meat industries linked to climate change, or the fact that leather is the most polluting fashion material and things like this. But when I was researching for the book and putting it all together, I realized that just essentially everything we do to animals has an effect on us, whether it's animals used for food, animals used for fashion, animal experimentation, even animals used for entertainment, even individual cases of cruelty to animals, where people who are cruel to animals are 3 times more likely to commit crimes against human beings. And so I thought it very necessary to help people see that it's not just nice to be nice to animals. It's a necessity for our own well-being and often for our own survival. So the book talks about all sorts of links, meat, egg, and dairy production and the climate catastrophe, overuse of antibiotics in animals used for food, and how this is resulting in antibiotic resistance becoming a huge and growing global public health threat, which simply means that when we need antibiotics, they're becoming less and less effective or not working, or creating a situation where the diseases that we need to treat are becoming far more aggressive and harder to treat. I talk about all sorts of the use of animals for fashion and its effect on the environment, but also on human beings. For instance, much leather comes from India or Bangladesh. In the tanning area of Bangladesh, people, 90% of the workers die by the age of 50. So, animal rights issues, environmental issues, human rights issues, they're all intertwined. And it's important to see that. Because if we disregard animals, we are really also disregarding ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And you give such a great breakdown of all of this in your book. And before the podcast, we were talking about how there's so many great short video clips of these subject matters kind of talking about the different industries and what happens to animals. But to really give a complex, deep dive into these things is really helpful. And so I definitely recommend that people check out Survival at Stake, and also A Moment for Taste as well. I'm so curious what your experience was writing the book and how you went about researching it. Because one day I'm like, it's a goal of mine to possibly write a book, but I also don't want to do something that has already been done, before. And so, but your angle of being able to tackle India and show people things that they had no idea is brilliant. But I don't know what was your writing process like?
So I think for both of the books, it wasn't writing the book that was my first motivator. It was more recognizing a need. So for A Moment of Taste, there are books about what happens to animals for food in the US or in Europe or, this type of thing. But that type of information, even though a lot of what happens in those places is the same as what happens to animals here because of the rise of factory farming, but people didn't believe it, because it was a book about somewhere else. And so I thought that I have had the unique opportunity to have visited many farms where animals are reared in India, slaughterhouses, following trucks, and then meeting also animals on the happy end at sanctuaries in the country and so on. And so I thought, I have to tell these animal stories. I have to tell people exactly what happens to them in detail, because there wasn't a resource like that about animals in India. And not everything is the same. For instance, in India, it is rare for an animal to be stunned prior to slaughter. So they very much feel the knife going across their throat. So there are those sorts of differences. The Khaal Bachha is another example of something which is unique to India. Baby chicks, the way they're killed, yes, as we know, male chicks, because they cannot lay eggs, are considered waste by the egg industry, similar to how male calves are considered waste by the dairy sector. And they are killed around the world. In India, they're killed in all sorts of gruesome ways, haphazard, kind of. The company seems to decide how they want to do that. Some of them are burned, some of them are drowned, some of them are buried alive, some of them are crushed, some of them are fed live to fish.
Ugh, all violent.
All violent.
There's no unviolent. There's no way to do it that's not violent.
And it's not going to change if somebody doesn't talk about it. So the purpose of the book was to influence individuals, but also to influence government policy, to influence corporations to do better. So that's what it was. And similarly with Survival at Stake, I thought, yes, there's lots of information out there about how meat, egg, and dairy industries contribute to the climate catastrophe and that sort of thing. But there wasn't a comprehensive book about how the way we treat animals for food, for clothing, for experimentation, for entertainment, how all of those things affect human well-being.
Right. And this is that. So when we talk about creating that change, whether it's starting with the conversation being had and educating people, to then getting in the hands of the right person to drafting policy or legislation, I'm curious, from your point of view, somebody that's seen so much change in the last 25 years, what really is that process? Like, when there is a campaign that's launched at PETA, walk me through the process from beginning to hopefully end.
Governments, corporations, they're all made up of individuals. And so the idea is to try to get those individuals to see what's happening to animals. Because a lot of times they don't know. A lot of times they don't know what's happening in their own industry. They might be selling leather, or they might be selling an animal tested product, but they don't know what that means. So the first step is to we try to do the investigations, data gathering, and then bring that information to these individuals who work at the corporate, who work at the government. They have a heart, just like anybody else, and oftentimes it really is something as simple as that, someone speaking up and asking for something that has never been asked before. If that doesn't work, a lot of times we're also able to show them how it benefits them, because a lot of times steps which are kind to animals are also kind to the environment. They may have goals that they've set for themselves to do better on the environment and so on. And we also take the same information out to the public. So we encourage the public to join us in asking for change. And it's really through these basic measures, yes, we might, sometimes hold demonstrations, or we might, put up a billboard or that sort of thing. But this is really the core of it. We raise the issue, we take it to the concerned person, and we take the information to the public, and it's usually often the public that really helps us bring about that change.
And getting that policy implemented.
Yes, because I do think most people are fundamentally kind. It's simply that they're unaware of a lot of times of what happens to animals.
And what has the role of social media been in either helping or hindering the animal rights movement?
Well, years ago, when we would do investigations, we would have to take it to a news outlet, essentially beg them to cover it. They may cover it partially, or they may not cover it because maybe it's about somebody who advertises with them, or that sort of thing. So it would come out in kind of an edited form. Whereas in social media, we are able to put the full truth out there. And it's shared. And a lot of times we see our videos shared very rapidly, millions of views. And I believe that this has really helped in raising public consciousness about animals and animal rights and animals' feelings and what's happening to animals in a much more rapid way than we would have had seen without social media.
Then you also see the other side of it, where the meat industry has their own influencers that they pay heavily to promote the carnivore diet and all these weird, crazy trends that are not backed by science, that are just funded by the meat industry. And then it confuses people, because my whole page online now, like my homepage, is filled with the raw carnivore people, and like they're like, you need to drink raw milk, and it's because I engage in those accounts, so Instagram thinks I'm like into it or something.
Right.
But yeah, it's so frustrating.
Yes, they work hard to try to confuse people, to try to deliberately put out misleading information, whether it's about the environment or whether it's even about what they do to the animals. You often see things like, oh, this happy pig image, or happy cow, or that sort of thing. I do think that a lot of times when you see that stuff, it looks ridiculous. And I hope that it looks as ridiculous to other people as it does to me, because I do think some of that stuff does come across as silly and ridiculous. I think it's simply up to us to continue to put out consistent messaging and the truth. And I do think it is hard to argue, when you see what's happening to these pigs, or what's happening to these cows, or these chickens, or these fish. That, to me, I think, speaks louder than a lot of this other noise.
Absolutely. And I encourage anybody that still eats these products to go to the farms yourself and film it and post about it and explain to those animals why the hell you still eat them.
Well, today we know a lot more about animals than we did yesterday. I would say we allow ourselves to know a lot more about animals. I think that we are so slow on some of that because we had to first, if you start recognizing that chickens and pigs and cows and fish and other animals are thinking, feeling, emotional beings, then there is a moral responsibility to that knowledge. And if you know the information, you cannot just sit on it. You can't just sit on knowing that a mother cow is so protective of her baby that she loves her baby, and yet we rip that baby away. Or you can't sit on knowing that a hen talks to her chicks while they're still in their eggs, and that they form this beautiful bond between each other, or that a pig is as or smarter than a dog who we call a friend at home. And, so once you start recognizing that they may come in different packages and shapes and sizes, but inside, there's not a whole lot of difference between the animals we call friends, dogs and cats, and these other animals that we have called food, but why? They have just as much desire to live, are as thinking, as feeling. And so, increasingly when we start seeing this, we have to question what we do and how we treat these animals.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly couldn't shut it off. Like, I remember the first time that I connected where my food came from, I saw a pig livestock truck on the highway, and it was always replaying in my mind. And as much as I tried to ignore it and push it away, I was like, I know it's wrong, I shouldn't. And then I think about some of my closest family members that I'm like, exactly what happens to chickens in the egg industry. You know exactly what happens to dairy cows in the dairy industry. In fact, I was in a short film where I played a dairy cow from a human perspective. It's called The Next Girl, and my dad is literally sitting in the movie theater watching me be raped on camera, and then he has the audacity to go home and have cheese in a sandwich or something. And I'm like, you know it, but you don't really know it? I don't know.
Well, we have to be careful of things that we think are normal. It's so normalized, all the cruelty to animals. And, if you think about it, from the moment that we wake up, we might brush our teeth with toothpaste that has been tested on animals. Then we might sit down for a meal that contains animals, and then put on shoes that were made of animals, and then put on makeup that was tested on animals. And so, all of these things are so normalized, but really they're not normal at all. And I think more and more people are starting to see the connection between these, the food that's on our plate, or, the makeup we wear, and all this sort of thing, and are able to trace it now back to exactly what happens to animals because of the kind of investigations being put out, the videos being put out, and also more and more people speaking up and saying, hey, that doesn't sit well with me. I don't want to do that. And not only that, we don't have to do that. We don't have to do that. These days, I mean, you can still have the same taste or the same texture. You can still be stylish. You can still, wear makeup or whatever it is that you want to do. There's no change in quality of life. There's no change in even taste, because there's all the wonderful vegan products, the vegan foods available, the vegan leathers, now leathers made of plants. We can choose to be kind. We have the tools to choose to be kind very easily without even any sort of sacrifice.
Nobody is asking you to walk around in a cotton loincloth and shoes made from leaves. There are other options these days, thank God. Yeah. And I think that is a good way to draw people in, for sure. And as you said in the beginning, kind of leading by example. I like to ask people, what are things that you like or enjoy outside of activism? Is there anything? Because I have found that, like, my identity is animal rights. Like, if you ask me who I am or what I am, I'm an animal rights activist, and that's basically what you're gonna get, But we are, layers. We are so much more than that as well.
Yeah.
Who is Poorva?
So it's funny that you said that, because I felt like some of my answers will lead back to animals. But so I'm called the Senior Vice President of International Affairs for PETA in the UK. And I think one of the reasons why I got that job is because I have an international background. My parents are from India. I grew up in the States. I live in the UK sometimes. Sometimes I live in India. I spend time in Jordan and so on. And so in addition to traveling for work, I like to travel for fun. I tend to try to tack on something fun to do, something fun to explore while I'm in different countries looking after animal rights projects. I love everything about India. India is endless. You know, there's endless vegan food to explore. See, I'm getting back to animals.
I knew you would.
There's endless vegan food to explore, but there's endless wonderful places. And there's so many cultures also, you know, that have actually historically had respect for animals built into them, especially in India. You know, there's a cultural relevance for animals. There's a religious relevance for animals. The Jain religion, Jains told us a long time ago, thousands of years ago, that animals matter. You know, it doesn't matter how small or big they are. So I do love, you know, meeting people from different cultures and hearing and seeing what they have to say about animals, but about other things too.
Because it's like I'll be just doing something considered quote unquote normal, and then I'll be like, oh my God, is that a horse and carriage? Like, what is going on here? And then the event becomes about that, you know?
Yeah, no.
It's like everywhere you look.
That's true. But I think it's so important to travel and to talk to people from different places, because I think you also start seeing what we think of as normal, I suppose, as just cultural. So I give you an example. Here, it is quite abnormal to eat cows. You know, they're given the status of mother, but in the U.S., they're considered food. But for instance, there's parts of India, it's not very common, but there's parts of India where dogs are eaten. But in the U.S., they're considered absolute friends. And so you start seeing these decisions as not, these animals are not inherently food. It's a cultural decision. And then when you start seeing it as that way, you can start thinking to yourself, well, no, that's not something that I need to prescribe to. I can make a different decision. So travel is one. I like cooking. Oh no, it's gonna go back to vegan food.
It's okay. Tell me about some good Indian recipes or things that you like to cook. Because being here in India, all I know to say is like no butter, no ghee, no milk in every place I go to, and it's still been a little challenging. This one guy hands me a thing. He goes, only a little bit of ghee, and I said, no, I don't want a little bit of suffering.
Well, you know, India, there's so many plants, and there's so many different types of, I think I read that there's some 45,000 plant species in India. I think you can make a different vegan dish every day of the year and beyond for about 25 years probably. You probably don't have to repeat yourself because there's just so many edible plants in India. There's so many edible plants in the world. I mean, if you think about it, people who eat animals, they're eating the same 4 or 5 species on repeat for every meal. And to make those animals taste good, they use plants for seasoning.
Of course.
So if it's just about the texture, well, you can have the texture from jackfruit, you can have the texture from tofu, from mushrooms, and so on, and still have that taste, which in any case has come from plants.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Cooking is something that I'm trying to work on and get better at, because I'm like take raw tofu, slap it on a piece of toast and call it a day because it's easy and quick, you know, and that is like the ultimate like meme of the vegan just eating a block of tofu. I'm like, that's me.
You work so hard. We work so hard to help animals all day long. I find cooking quite meditative.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to go so far as to call it an art form. Someone might expect a lot from me after talking about cooking so much. No, I'm not sure that I'm that good at it. I just like to do it.
It's a way to be an activist too.
Yeah.
It is. And it's a way to get to people's hearts for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what is on the horizon for you? What do you have going on next?
Oh my gosh, we have so much happening. I think one of the more exciting, or unique projects that we have in India right now is are projects to try to transition out the use of elephants in temples with mechanical elephants. This is just going so super well. We have just been part of the 10th mechanical elephant donation. So just to help people in your audience understand, temples in India often have an elephant to represent Lord Ganesha. And these animals, because the temple is not a wildlife sanctuary, they spend their entire lives pretty much on a concrete floor, chained to the floor, usually by themselves. They're often female elephants, where in nature they would be with their families their entire lives. And they're controlled through weapons. They would have undergone extremely harsh training to get them to be obedient. Some of the elephants that we've rescued from temples have been there for decades. We rescued one in the state of Maharashtra who had been chained in place pretty much since 1965.
How long do they live?
Oh, they live, too long when it comes to something like that. So we managed to get this elephant, who was way older than I am, to live out at least the remaining years at a sanctuary. And they live for decades. They can live well beyond 60 years.
Wow.
And so a lot of these elephants spend all of those decades. If you think about everything you've done in your life, well, that elephant had been chained in place. And when I saw him, he was doing this growl, almost this sort of call. And we had an elephant expert with us, and I said, "Oh, what's he doing?" And they said, "Well, he's calling for a mate." And I thought, calling for a mate? A mate who's never come. I don't know. That just broke my heart. And so I'm so happy that we managed to get him out, but there's so many more like him. And because the use of elephants is so entrenched in Indian temples, we had to come up with a solution that was like a win-win. And so we learned somehow that there was this artisan who was making mechanical elephants almost like as an art project. And we thought, gosh, why don't we try that? And the use of the mechanical elephants, they're embraced by temples because a mechanical elephant's way easier to take care of.
Yes.
Way cheaper, will not attack you, which is a big deal. Frustrated elephants, they lash out all the time. I think just a month and a half ago, there was a 10-day or so period where there was an elephant attack almost every day. Just in the state of Kerala alone, 6 people got killed. And this was at different events. It wasn't even at the same event. Elephants retaliate all the time. So it's also safer, it's kinder. It helps keep real elephants in the jungle. And what I love about it the most is that children love the mechanical elephant. So they are now learning that this is the right thing to do and that it is wrong to keep real elephants that way. That is changing generations now.
PETA's Ellie, the animatronic elephant, goes around to different schools in India, which I got the opportunity to participate in and chat with the students. And it was amazing to see how excited they were about it, but also what they were learning from it, that all animals are not for us to use, which is kind of that gateway into them thinking about the food system and the clothing industry. And so it's really impactful.
Yeah, it's like that person who gave my friend the leaflet on Oxford Street and planted that seed. And, because these children, they're going to become, who knows, politicians. They're going to be leading companies. They're going to be decision makers. They're going to be doctors. They're going to be teachers. They're going to be the future, and the future should be kind.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the work that you are doing, the work that you've done for so many years. You're an inspiration to so many people, including myself. So thank you. I hope to accomplish and be doing this as long as you have and as forcefully as you have.
Well, you're an inspiration too. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And where can people connect with you?
I'm easy to find. You connect with us through PETA India's website. If you write to the info account, if you want to write to me, they will forward that to me. So super easy to find. Otherwise, any questions that you may have, any ways you want to get active, we have somebody who will get back to you with help or what you need or what you want to do. And if you're not a PETA member yet, then please become one, because you'll get our quarterly magazine Animal Times, which also contains lots of ways to get active and news and information about animal rights.
Yep, we need to stop with the excuses and take action today, because the animals they don't have any time. They need us speaking now, every day, in any way that you can. So you guys, thank you so much for watching. I am at It's Jamie's Corner. Go follow PETA India. And until next time, I'll see you around.